From To Keto LLC, it's Keto Woman Podcast with Daisy Brackenhall.
Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. Keto has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman Podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs to 20 grams or less per day, so things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds, and the incidental carbs you find in things like dairy. Moderate protein scale to your lean body mass, and then fat to satiety. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalised keto. I'll be asking my guests each week what their keto looks like, to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we can't give you medical advice. It's always best to work with your own doctor because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Please help other people hear about and find this podcast by reviewing the show on iTunes or your own chosen podcatcher, and the Keto Woman Podcast Facebook page. Every star, preferably 5 of course, and review really helps. Here are some reviews from the Keto Woman Podcast Facebook page. Nancy Aragon from 13th of January. Thank you, Daisy Brackenhall. I'm enjoying your podcast and all your guests. Karen Parrott from 3rd of December. Real women telling real stories. I learned so much from the interviews. Even though I've been paleo, low-carb, high-fat, keto for almost 6 years, listening to the interviews renews my enthusiasm for the lifestyle. Bravo and keep up the great work. Chrissy Bowie from the 5th of January. I love the weekly chat Daisy has with people that represent a really broad spectrum of perspectives. Everyone's personal journey is unique. There is always lots to take away. Inspirational human stories and a nice sense of community. How wonderful it is to live in a time of access to ideas from across the globe and across all areas of society. Please keep up the great work, Daisy. Thanks very much, guys. Really, really appreciate it. This week we welcome back extraordinary woman Taffiny Elrod. Taffiny is a professional chef and culinary instructor located in New York City and New York's Hudson Valley. With over 15 years of professional culinary experience, she has cooked and taught many culinary styles with a special interest in food for health and culinary traditions. Most recently, she taught professional cooking for veterans returning to the workforce in New York City before opening a small restaurant with her husband in New York's Hudson Valley. Inspired by her success with her own ketogenic low-carb, high-fat diet, she launched a cooking website called Keto Cooking School, where she shares recipes and techniques and plans to explore the connection between traditional, classical, and the ketogenic way of eating. As ever, I had a blast chatting to Taffy. I hope you enjoy making your mouth water with the recipes we serve up to you today. Welcome back again, Taffiny, to the Keto Women Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Daisy. Thank you. It's a pleasure, as always, to be back with you.
So today we are going to be talking about dips and chips, or dips and crackers.
That's right.
Whatever you like to call it. But I think probably everyone's favourite. Everyone loves dips.
I would hope so. I do.
It's just that thing of bits and pieces of all sorts of different things, isn't it? That sort of smorgasbord type.
Yeah.
All sorts of yummy goodies that you can pick from. I don't think there's anyone I know who doesn't like that.
It's fun and it's delicious. It's just something about it, yeah.
So let's start with the vehicles for the dips. I thought I would kick off with, I think it's quite nice to have a selection of sliced vegetables. I always think they look pretty. Mm-hmm. They look healthy. and it's just always, I think, if you're going to provide an array of things, especially because it's quite typical, isn't it, to put out dips and crackers and things when you've got a group of people around. It's party food, isn't it? So I think it's nice to have a good selection that you know that everyone's going to have something that they like.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And it lightens it up a little bit. A lot of dips and spreads can be rich, which is good. But, having some vegetable fare in there can help to lighten it up.
Exactly.
And refresh
it's a good way to just and to give a different texture and a different flavour. But things that I like are sliced peppers, radishes, I think are nice, especially if you've got a little pot of salt there. I mean, I just like radishes and salt, but they're nice dipped in things. Celery is not a favourite of mine, but I know other people like it. And carrot sticks I like. Obviously, some people that's a bit too sweet for them, but I think it's a nice flavour and crunch that appeals to lots of other people if you've got non-keto friends. And the thing that I find works really well as nice little sort of spoon bowl implements are chicory or endive, they call it here. It's got that lovely sort of bitter edge to it, but actually quite a nice sort of firm little sort of like lettuce cup, really, but works really well.
Yeah, it's really a perfect scooping agent or a vehicle. Endive or endive, as we tend to call it here. Very,
very popular here. I've taken to braising it in butter is very delicious as well, but for dips, just nice and crispy, crunchy, and like I say, that slight bitter edge, which has a good flavour note, doesn't it, to the dips?
Yeah, absolutely. It helps to cut through some of the richness,
exactly what you need sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, and I also, of course, peppers look beautiful because you can have different colors. I also like to use jicama. Jicama is great. It looks somewhat like a radish.
Of course, This is this thing that I've heard of that makes quite good. You can make fries with it, can't you? It's not something that we get over here, but
I haven't tried that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I believe it's South American in origin, or Central American in origin. It's very crisp. It's somewhat like a radish, but it has more water, and it's almost a little sweet. It doesn't have any bite to it, and it's great for dipping because it's very crunchy, it's very crispy, it's very refreshing. You can use it with just about anything because it's fairly neutral in flavor. So I use that as well. I love pickles, actually. I love to use pickled vegetables. So, cornichon or Israeli, pickles, the smaller ones. I absolutely love pickled turnips, the Middle Eastern style pickled turnips. Those are with something like a hummus style dip. I love that. I personally believe that I can dip aged cheese into things. Any kind of, I don't care what kind, a good piece of cheddar or Gouda or something that's got a little body to it. And I'm perfectly happy doing that. I perhaps have even dipped an olive into something in my lifetime. I can admit to that.
Anything you can dip, basically. I mean, with the cheese, something like the fried halloumi sticks would be good, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with something like maybe something, like a salsa type sort of dip.
Yeah, definitely. You could do that. The halloumi or the queso de friar, the frying cheese, Latin American frying cheese, absolutely. And then of course you can, if you feel so inclined, make your own keto-friendly low-carb crackers if you'd like to have some crackers. And there's so many out there. I know you've got one that you like to make. I made for the first time some with sesame flour. And sesame flour has a little bit of a bitterness to it. Not everybody loves it. You could mix it as well, but it's something different. And if you can't have nuts, it's a nice option. And I really like it. I used to love those fried sesame sticks, and it tastes sort of like that. So, and it's very simple. You just mix together approximately a cup of sesame flour and add in a couple tablespoons of sesame seeds for, body and excitement. And I actually added a little bit of caraway seeds because I love caraway, and that worked out well.
Yeah, nice flavor twist that.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of caraway. Goes
well with cabbage as well, doesn't it? Caraway.
Oh, absolutely. Sauerkraut. If you miss, I used to be a lover of rye bread. It gives that sort of a reminiscence of that flavor. So that's nice. And of course, I'll have a recipe for this, but about a tablespoon of olive oil. And you just knead that all together and roll it out between either two sheets of parchment paper. I actually used tin foil because I just had aluminum foil handy. And you roll it out very thin, maybe about a 1/4 inch thickness. And you leave it attached to one side. You leave it on one piece of the foil or parchment paper and put it in the oven like that. First, you cut it up with a pastry cutter or a pizza cutter or a knife, but you leave it together. You bake it in the oven for, let's see, approximately, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And then when it comes out and cools down, you break them up and it breaks where you've cut it. I made 1 inch square, very small pieces, and I got about 60 of them for that amount. If you want to make them, you can cut them to any size or shape you'd like.
They sound delicious. As I love the flavor of sesame, and it's
oh, so do I.
It's going to work really well with some different flavor dips, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you're doing, it's a great compliment if you're doing things like a low carb hummus or some Mediterranean or Middle Eastern type dips, which there are so many wonderful dips to choose from. And then if you have other seeds that you'd like to add, of course you could do poppy seed. You could do, any seeds that you enjoy for a flavoring in there.
That's a good one. Well, I have some seed crackers, which I make that I really, really love. And a friend of mine who regularly comes around for dinner, he just goes absolutely mad for them, loves them. And I was going to say it's a bit of a faff to make, but as far as some things go that are super easy, it takes a bit longer, and it's a bit of a faff, but not much, and they're worth it. So the recipe that I make, and I can't for the life of me remember where I got it originally, and I've adapted it since. But basically, they're held together with a glue that you get from psyllium husks predominantly, but also from flax seeds and chia seeds. And I think one of the recipes I originally used, they just used the flax seeds to make the glue, but I didn't find it was a strong enough glue. And it's the psyllium I found that really held it together. I experimented with using egg white and all sorts of things, but this is the one that I ended up with, which is great and just tasted the seeds. And it's basically 3 cups of seeds. I think it's best to have one of those as flax, and then 2... And again, you can be reasonably approximate. That's when I quite like using cups as a measurement. If your measurements are a bit either way, it's not going to matter. This is quite a hit and miss type recipe. It's not going to be damaged by not getting it to the absolute gram. So 3 cups of seeds, 1 of those flax, and then 2 other. I like to use a combination of sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, and when I've got them, I often throw some hemp hearts in there as well. And then about half a tablespoon of chia seeds, if you've got them. Doesn't matter if you haven't. They just sort of add to the glue, really. 1.5 tablespoons of psyllium husks. Now, I use the whole husks, which are so fine, they're almost like a powder anyway. And I haven't tried it using the powder, and I don't know whether the amount would be about the same, probably, but I'm not sure. And then seasonings and herbs. I generally just use salt and pepper, but I've put in things like thyme and rosemary before if I want that kind of flavour, a Mediterranean type flavour, or I've put things like cumin and coriander. You can put whatever you like in, basically, or you can just have them plain with some salt. That you've just got the flavour of the seeds, so it's all about the seeds. Or nuts. You can add nuts. I've put flaked almonds in. You could have hazelnuts, walnuts, anything you like. But just have. So if you were going to use nuts, I'd probably have at least 2/3 of that as the seeds, and just some nuts for flavour. And then you can either use them whole, or what I do is give them a quick blitz in the food processor just to break the size down a bit. I've just found it makes for a slightly better cracker. You mix all the dry ingredients really well, and then you add in 1.5 cups of tepid to warm water. Mix it really, really well, and you leave it to stand, stirring occasionally for about 15 minutes. And what happens with the water as it mixes with the psyllium husks and the flax and the chia, and it just makes like this glue, and it all kind of gets gloopy and sticks together. And it's really important to leave it for a reasonable period of time to let that water fully absorb. And you get this like quite sort of hard cement mixture, really. And what I do is spread it out onto it. You could use greaseproof paper. I have this silicone sheet that I squish it. You wet your hands slightly, and then it doesn't stick. Mm-hmm. And you squish it out with your hands. And then I put a sheet of greaseproof on the top and just roll it out. Get it as thin as you reasonably can, and then I score it into, say, 4 pieces. It goes into the oven, a low oven, about 150 Celsius for about 30 to 40 minutes. And again, it's sort of quite about, it's not going to matter if you go a bit over, but basically you're getting it dry enough that you can take that sheet out and you can peel the whole lot off, and you cut it into those sections, and you flip them over and put them straight on the racks in the oven. So the whole idea with these is just to dry them out. You are cooking them, you're toasting them a bit, but it's just drying them out. Right. And then they go back in that oven for about another 30 or 40 minutes. Just sort of keep an eye on them. I forgot them once. I went shopping and I came back and they weren't burnt, but they were very overdone, and they were still edible. So there is margin for error. And then they just come out nice and dry, and you just break them up. The reason I keep them that slight bit bigger is that they're just easier then to sit on the racks. You could score them and make them much smaller, but then it's difficult to get them dry enough if they're sitting on something like a silicone sheet or greaseproof paper, because there's always that slight moisture underneath. So I found it's difficult to get them really dry. Yeah. So I just get them out and then snap them into irregular pieces.
That makes sense. Well, it sounds very much like a recipe that you could do in a dehydrator.
That's true.
And it sounds like the sort of crackers that I've seen, raw foodists who won't heat their food past a point make in a dehydrator. So it makes sense because, then you, of course, for however many hours you have to leave it there until they just have completely dried, and then you would have so it's, it sounds similar.
Yeah, good idea. And the other thing that might work out too, that gave me a mental image of this great thing that Mum's got to cook. I think it's mainly for cooking oven chips in, actually, but it's like this quite fine mesh net that then sits straight on the grill shelves in the oven. But of course it lets the air through, but it's quite fine, so things don't fall through. But it lets the air circulate. So it's all about circulating the air and drying them out, really. But also, the oven's hot enough that it toasts them a bit, so you get that nice toastiness. Yeah, but they are delicious. They are delicious. So delicious that I don't make them very often, because once I've made a batch, I just spend the next few days just eating them. They're great. They're a great fix for one of the things I really miss is my butter and Marmite on toast. And it's something that really satisfies that craving. But they're great with cheese, or they're great with dips. So they're really versatile, really delicious. I really recommend them. And you can also, I actually tend to make up a bigger batch and then split it in half, and I've frozen it. And I've just kept it in the fridge for later. And although it's quite solid, it is easy enough to then roll out at a later date.
Oh, that's nice. That's good.
So that's my offering: seed crackers. So tell me more about some of the other chip recipes that you've got.
Well, there's, of course, I think pretty much everybody knows about Parmesan crisps or cheese crisps or crisps, I can talk, or you may know them as frico in Italian. Simplest thing on earth, an aged cheese that you like, shredded and toasted in the oven until it's crisp. But they're so delicious, and they're so simple and they're good with so many things. But there's a couple secrets that make them a little bit better. One is to grate your cheese yourself and grate it coarsely. Not, oftentimes if you buy pre-grated cheese, it's almost like a powder. And of course, it can also have additives. They add something to make sure it doesn't, anti-caking agents and things like that. So
yeah, it usually has potato starch or tapioca starch or something.
Right. So, you may or may not care about eating that, but it makes a nicer product when you have. So you grate it more coarsely, almost like you would if you were grating a potato, to make a potato cake or something like that. And you lay that out on, if you have a silicone sheet, if you have, again, parchment paper, foil, you just spread it out in the diameter that you want. And it doesn't matter. Some people make them large and make bowls out of them for things. But for dips, obviously, just an inch or two in diameter. And you spread them out so they're almost like lace. And because you have those larger pieces of cheese, you can afford to get away with a little space in there. And if it's a good Parm, a Parmigiano Reggiano, or a good quality Parm. I used Grana Padano because we always have that in the restaurant. But whatever cheese you might have, you could use. I would just, you could use a Manchego. You could use a good aged. Anything that's aged a little bit dry, has a little body to it.
Or mix them up, presumably. Have a combination. Mm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mix them up. Romano, of course, And spread them out. But again, spread them thin. Leave a little space. You put them in a low oven, or a high oven. It doesn't matter. Again, it's one of those things, it really doesn't matter. Do what you want. Make it how you want. You can put it in a, 375 Fahrenheit oven for 10 minutes. You can put it in a 275 oven for, 15 or 20 minutes and let them sort of dry up. It's just a little
bit more forgiving, isn't it? If you go with a slightly lower temperature, you're not...
Yeah.
Quite
Absolutely.
So likely, and I've done this with bacon before, if the oven's a bit too hot, you can literally, it seems, turn around for 10 seconds and you turn back around and there's smoke coming out the oven.
Yeah, absolutely. And nobody wants to waste good product. So if you do it, and actually I've done them on the griddle before too, very easily. You just flip them over halfway through.
Yeah, I've actually done them in the microwave too.
Yep.
Done the same with salami, pepperoni. Yeah. Works quite well.
It's funny, I had recently made some with grated Parm that I was shocked because they came off the griddle and they tasted almost like hash brown potatoes, which I used to love. And I kept thinking maybe I was deluding myself, but they were like, somehow they really had that taste and that texture because they still had a little bit of moisture inside. So, whatever cheese you'd like, you can mix in herbs, of course. Same thing. You could, fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, fresh oregano, dried herbs, dried spices, a little chili flake. People put in a slice of fresh, hot pepper. You could put a little dry, if you had, like oil cured olives, a little something. You don't want moisture, but if you have something that's dry enough, you can introduce it. The sky's the limit. Whatever you would like. They're so simple. They're so delicious. They're crispy. They have, again, if you use that larger, coarser grating of cheese, they have a little more body to them. They hold up pretty well. If you're gentle with them in the beginning, they'll hold up pretty well. The smaller you make them, the easier they are to dip with. If they're too big, then it's hard to dip with them. But if they're a small size, about an inch, you should do pretty well with them. So, again, simple, nothing crazy. And also, same thing applies to cured meats. Pepperoni, hard salami, hard chorizo. Any cured meat that you prefer, that you can slice it thin, but not too thin. Maybe a 1/4 inch thick or so. And that's also where a lower temperature comes in handy. Maybe 275 Fahrenheit, something like that. Just till they're crisp. You can lay them out on a sheet, put them in the oven until they're crisp. And they're really good, solid dipping crisps, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely. They hold up well. You can pair them, in a way that oh, this would be good with this would go well with that, those, and be, again, whatever, if you've got a little bit left that, might otherwise go to waste and you have a way to slice it, or if you get some sliced, what have you, those work great, and they're delicious. And satisfies that crunchy, crispy saltiness that that chips are loved for, or crisps, as depending on where you are,
It's one of the things that comes up, isn't it, that people say they miss is the crunch of those kind of snacks.
Yeah.
So to be able to make an alternative that's actually more delicious. What's more delicious than crispy cheese or crispy salami? Yum.
Virtually nothing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, I made crispy beef bacon and used that as a dipping implement, and it was awesome. So you may already be dipping it in your egg yolks, but you can use it, you can dip. Of course, it's good with cheese. Of course, pairs well with onions, anything like that. So
yeah, I mean, crispy.
There's so many options
of bacon. I mean, they're just designed for doing that, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And I can admit I was not a big sweet eater, but I used to joke that my favorite flavor was fried. I loved, fries and chips and corn chips. And I used to really love that stuff. I was surprised at how little I miss it. But at the same time, I also have been surprised at, how satisfying those things are, that if I do want something crunchy, salty, fill that void, I'm happy. I'm fine. It's better even, dare I say it.
Yum. Yeah. No, I agree with you. So we've got this fabulous range now of crisps and chips and dipping vehicles for our dips.
Right.
So let's have some dips.
Indeed. Well, there's so many. It's so hard. I love making these things. And of course, if you're doing parties and catering, you've got to make a lot of them. I will start with one of my all-time favorite dips / spreads because I adore olives. So tapenade is where it's at for me. I love this stuff. Traditional tapenade generally includes anchovies, capers, and then of course olives. A good quality olive. Here, for me, the simplest to use is a Kalamata olive. I have good Kalamata olives. Whatever olive you have that you like, and you can use a black olive, you can use a green olive, you can mix. I mix them quite often.
What's the difference? Because I'm really not a fan of olives, so I don't know what they taste like at all. But what really is the difference in flavour between black olives and green olives?
Well, the difference, black olives, it depends on the olive. There's so many varieties of olives, but black olives are ripe and green olives are not ripened. So green olives tend to have a tangier, maybe slightly more astringent flavor, a little sharper, and black olives are a little softer, a little rounder. And it really depends. Some olives can be very buttery and mild. Some are very tangy. Some have a lot of vinegar that they've been, they all have to be brined. They're not edible unless they're brined. So they are salty, of course. Some have vinegar, some have herbs. It really depends. There's oil cured with salt that are not in a brine. That's the other option. That those are very, very concentrated. It just depends. There's two schools of people who like olives and people who don't. I think they're very, it tends to separate people down that line.
Yeah, and so it's way more complex than just black and green. It shows how little I know about olives. I just don't really like them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who feel that way about them. Yeah, and if you're not, you've probably seen green olives with a pimento inside and, black olives in a can. And, if all you've ever had is canned black olives, I can't blame you for not liking them. Those aren't the most delightful. And some people just don't like them. But
I have to say, though, that I've used tapenade in other recipes. So, a smear of tapenade. My mum makes this a great starter, actually, which is quite a thin slice of aubergine that's been sort of char grilled, and then it has like this smear of tapenade and then goat's cheese on the top. And you see, that's delicious. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't particularly, but I wouldn't like to tuck into a bowl of olives.
Yeah.
But so tapenade, very useful.
Absolutely.
So yeah. How do you make yours?
Yeah. And again, so I like mine to have a little brightness. It can be very earthy. It's obviously very salty. I mean, it's a great keto food. It's fatty, salty, and concentrated. So, but I've always loved it. But I actually like to brighten mine a little bit. I don't always put anchovy. I sometimes will omit that. So the recipe that I'll share here is just very simple. A cup of Kalamata olives, rinse them to remove some excess salt. A tablespoon of capers, rinse those. And, you want to dry them out some to remove the excess salt and then that water. And then I like to add citrus zest. Either the zest of a lemon or the zest of an orange, if you happen to have an orange around. It's amazing how it brightens the flavor, lifts the flavor, and marries really well, which you wouldn't necessarily expect with the olives and the olive oil. A little bit of garlic. I don't use a lot. I don't like it to be really overpowering with the garlic. So, a small clove of garlic. And then, all this goes into a food processor, or if you have a mortar and pestle. And you add olive oil, of course. Dependent, just till you get the right consistency. So you might need about a quarter cup for something like this. Good quality extra virgin olive oil. Obviously, you don't need salt. You can add a pinch of pepper. Sometimes I add a little red chili flake for a little kick to it. And then the other thing that I like that really brightens it up is some fresh herbs. So I'll add fresh thyme, just the leaves from fresh thyme, or a little bit of fresh rosemary. Especially tarragon would be good. And you just pulse all that together. And that's it. It's simple. You can make it coarse and chunky if you want. You can make it down to a fine paste for spreading. And you can get you can add what you'd like to it. If you want, you could add a little vinegar or something like that. And again, typically something like that would have a couple fillets of anchovy pounded into it too. This is just a lighter version. It cuts back a little bit on the salt and the richness of it. And I love that as a dip, as a spread, part of salad dressings. You can make, if you're making like little pizzas of some sort, it's great on there. Pairs well. Anywhere you might put pesto, you could think of, tapenade. Like you said, eggplant and goat cheese and tapenade would be amazing combination. More fresh herbs.
See, that's sounding quite delicious. I'm tempted by that, and I can see going for a double dip here. So I'm taking my dipping implement, whichever I've chosen, and getting a bit of tapenade, and then going in for something else, like some kind of creamy, cheesy dip or something to go with it.
Yeah.
And like I say, that recipe that my mum makes, that sort of tangy goat's cheese seems to work really well, sort of offsetting it.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. I love goat cheese with olives. I love goat cheese with olive oil. I love goat cheese with more goat cheese. Sounds delicious. So yeah, that's, and again, you can mix it up with whatever olives you have and whatever you like. They need to be good. You can't, bad olives don't make a good tapenade, obviously, just like everything else in life. And then, so as you were saying, like something a little creamy or some other kind of, item, I actually have a very, very simple, it's not even a recipe, it's just a list of ingredients. Israeli cheese dip, which is delicious with the tapenade, which here I just use cream cheese. You could use any soft, fresh cheese, like a mild feta cheese or, anything that would be similar. And you just so here, you would have most likely an 8-ounce bar of cream cheese, split it in half into 2 portions, and each of those you flatten it out. You just, basically, it's pliable, so you roll it out almost like a dough between 2 pieces of plastic wrap or 2 pieces of wax paper or whatever, to similar, equal diameter, close, doesn't have to be exact. And you take about 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds and carefully toast them over. I don't toast them in the oven. I just put them in a dry skillet, dry saute pan, and just heat them up until they just start to get golden and pop a little bit. And then you want to pull them off because you don't want to overcook them. It doesn't taste good and it's not healthy. And you mix that with a couple teaspoons of dried oregano. And you take 1 piece of cream cheese, you put that mixture, half of that mixture over it, and you douse it with good extra virgin olive oil in your little serving dish. And then you put on the next layer of cheese, and you repeat that. And part of the point is to have really good olive oil and to be generous with it. And all you have is your toasted sesame seeds, your oregano, and your olive oil. Cream cheese is salted, so you don't necessarily need salt. I don't add salt. And you just drench it in olive oil, and then you want to put it away, and for an hour at least. Overnight is fine for those flavors to marry. It's very simple.
It sounds delicious. Yeah, I'm loving the sound of that.
It's wonderful. And again, that's something that would be great as a combination with the tapenade as well. And it's something about that combination of the toasted sesame seeds and the oregano and the olive oil with that backdrop of just the, sort of mild
making
creamy
my mouth
cheese. And it's so easy, and the ingredients are real simple to come by. That one works every time. I haven't had anybody tell me they don't like it yet.
And I have one it's very light, and I don't know exactly what the product would be in America, but here it's very popular. It's just called fromage blanc, white cheese, but it has the consistency. It's not the same as cream cheese. It's not like Philadelphia, for example. It's much lighter. It's much more has the consistency almost of whipped cream. Really light, sort of got a slightly yogurty flavour, I suppose. It's eaten here. It's very popular in France as a dessert. It's often it's just served up with sugar. They have it fromage blanc in a bowl and they douse it with sugar. So not exactly healthy, but very popular. And it comes in the normal fat, and I think they have a 0 fat as well, which obviously I don't go anywhere near. But the normal fat, it's not a particularly high fat, but it's not low carb, but it's not too bad. It usually sits at about 3.5-4%. So, quite like cream cheese, I suppose. But it's very light, and you can kind of whip it up. And I've had it a few times here as a starter. They just literally whip it with fresh herbs, whatever you wanted to put in there. But typically parsley, maybe I was going to say peut-être, then I was going to say it in French. a bit of a crossover there. A little bit of garlic, maybe just a hint, because it's so light. You wouldn't want to overpower it. But it's just a nice alternative if you've got some really sort of rich dips, something just really light to balance out. Yeah. So that would be quite a nice addition, I think, to our big platter of dips. Absolutely. It sounds wonderful to me. I love fresh herbs and anything. And I'm trying to think of, what here would be similar enough to use for it, whether like I said, I think farmer's cheese is... I was having a look online and they did mention that quark was fairly similar. Quark, yeah. I don't know what the consistency of that's like. It makes sense. Quark here is like somewhere between a fresh cheese and a yogurt. Yeah, so that sounds about right. Yeah. I suppose you could use strained yogurt. I suppose you could use, or you could, what do you call it? Like puree, cottage cheese, I suppose. I don't think it'd be the same, but you could use it. It would be good with fresh. It just has to have that really light and fresh. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Or mix even with a little cream, a little creme fraiche. Yeah, or even with some yogurt, I guess. Yeah. We used to get it in Brooklyn, this really nice, light, creamy feta cheese. I haven't seen it anywhere else. It's imported from Egypt. And that I can imagine would be, it's got higher fat content and it's not firm at all. It's fresh. It's softer than
cream cheese. It's like a creamy feta cheese, and that would work, I'm sure. That was delicious.
Little feta cubes are very popular here, actually. Come, ready for apéro, they call it here. The little nibbles that you'd have with a drink.
Yeah.
Just in the oil and herbs and little cubes of feta cheese.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can make a feta dip, too, by whipping feta with a little cream or yogurt or whatever and adding whatever you'd like. Yeah. So, there's all... Oh, it's just all so delicious, isn't it?
So what's next? What's next on our smorgasbord of dips?
Well, I decided to go out on a limb and make... Well, I made... hummus with cauliflower, but I've seen that quite often. That's pretty common. It's my first time trying it. I decided to try it.
I haven't tried it, actually. I keep meaning to, because I do like hummus.
It was funny. I used to make it all the time. And I used to love to eat it, when other people made it too. There's a restaurant back home where I grew up that has amazing hummus. Or hummus bitachine, if you prefer. Really, when you say hummus, you're really talking about chickpeas, really. But I made it I just took some cauliflower, about a pound of frozen cauliflower, and I cooked it in the oven until it was fairly dry and before it started to brown. And I just used that as I would the chickpeas in the hummus, and it came out great. And actually, my husband preferred it to the regular hummus, it's very light. But I took the other pound and I made scordalia, the Greek potato and garlic dip. And I was surprised. It really came out well. Now, warning, this is not for the faint of heart. If you don't like garlic, if you're a vampire, run for your life. I mean, this is all about raw garlic. This isn't roasted garlic. This isn't, this is about garlic. But if you feel a cold coming on, this would definitely
provide some bunches of parsley for people to chew on afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can garnish it with a little fresh parsley. But it's very similar to the way you would make a hummus, but you use, you start out with like 4 to 6 cloves, or however much you'd like, of just raw garlic. And you pulverize that with almonds, about a half a cup of blanched almonds. I had sliced blanched almonds, so I just used those. And then you add your cauliflower in our case. So it's a little different, of course. The texture isn't quite the same as a whipped potato, but it worked. And a little white wine vinegar, and to your taste, whatever you like, and about a half a cup of extra virgin olive oil. After you've pulverized everything and pureed it together with the cauliflower, you add in your olive oil. You can add it with the machine running, so it whips it up. And honestly, you could use a little fresh lemon juice if you like, but it's good with the vinegar, and obviously that's a little lower carb if you're concerned about that amount of carbs. And again, if it's garlicky, I mean, that's what it is. That is what it is. But it was delicious. I've always loved scordalia, so I just said, let me try it with the cauliflower and see how it comes out. And I was pleasantly surprised. So that one is maybe not if you're planning on having a romantic evening.
Well, if you both have it, it's fine. That sounds delicious. It's not a recipe I'm familiar with. And do you serve that warm or cold or either? Right.
Cold, actually. Traditionally, it's served, room temperature or cool. So it's not even warm, like hummus you would, or baba ganoush, something like that. Yeah, and it's got a kick to it, but it really worked out well. I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleased. The color is, of course, not quite as white. It's got a little bit more of a color to it, but it was fun. And it was fun making it. That was, fun to try it and have it work out. So that's another one. Obviously a lot of these dips are Mediterranean style or Mideast style, or, talk about mezza and, those sort of things. And I love those kind of meals. Vegetables, different flavors, and different, things to really, every bite should be, sort of interesting and new. And and that's the other thing too, you can have all these different combinations. Every bite can be different.
But I was going to say that. I mean, something that has such powerful flavors of that. Yeah, if you were just having, one kind of cracker with that dip, it's going to be overpowering. But if you're having it on a plate with all sorts of other things that you're mixing it with, it just takes some of that potency down a step or two.
Right. And it's interesting because you can continue to, you're sort of, in a sense, being, creative and creating a different dish every time you take a bite. Well, maybe now I'll try this with that, and maybe I'll try that, so it can be very, very exciting, and I think that's part of the fun. And you can, every moment can be a new flavor combination.
Yeah, and all these different combinations. I mean, how much more exciting and fabulous is this than, a bowl of Doritos and salsa? Do you know what I mean? I mean, back in the bad old days, you would just go and buy a couple of packets of crappy stuff and serve it up with some crappy stuff. But now we get a little bit more inventive, but you just end up with these things that are just, well, they're just worlds apart, aren't they? There really is no comparison.
No, there really isn't. And it's so much more, it's more delicious, it's more engaging, it's more fun. And then on top of it, you feel good, instead of, physically you feel good, and mentally you feel good. You didn't have something that was, I think inevitably most people after a bag of Doritos think to themselves, well, I shouldn't have done that, whatever their reason. Yeah,
you just also, you just don't feel very good after you've eaten that.
And your taste buds are telling you, like, what have you done to me? I now, I feel, it's like your taste buds are, I don't know what's the word, it's like scorch and burn. Yeah, exactly.
They've just been bludgeoned. Yeah, I always get a real lift from having something that I know is healthy and almost being kind of really surprised that it's delicious. Because with my past history of eating things that I thought were delicious, that I knew also were really bad for me. But now I'm eating things that I know are good for me. So I'm kind of surprised at how delicious they are, because I've associated in my mind something being delicious with not being good for me. So it kind of freaks me out when I'm sitting there going, you're just sitting there. Oh my God, this is just so delicious.
Yeah.
And it's health food. It's like, yay.
That's really, I think, one, you've hit on something that's really important, and it's amazing. We, unfortunately, so many of us at least in the Western world, have come to associate, health with suffering, and that, if it's delicious, it can't possibly be good for me. And if it's good for me, it can't possibly be delicious. And that feeling is pretty miserable, first of all, and coming around to be able to experience it differently, because if you really think about it, it doesn't really make sense, right? Let's say as a species, we're driven generally towards what is necessary or what is good for us by, something in us that tells us that we desire it. So, we desire salt for a reason. And of course you can override that system and pervert it by making things artificially, delicious or artificially addictive. But the truth is, you can come to a place of peace with yourself, that your body isn't betraying you, that you find things delicious for a reason, and they can be good for you, and you can enjoy your food and not have to have that guilt and not be miserable. And then you're not caught in this continuing cycle of hunger and misery and guilt and desire. And no, you can enjoy something fully and then move on. And, let's face it, that's much more productive too. It's pleasurable and it's productive. Yeah.
Exactly. You should be able to enjoy your food. Your body should get excited when you feed it. It should, you should get that lift. You should be thinking, this is delicious and it's making me happy. That is the way things should be. It's only because many of us have got so accustomed to having this contradiction, when we're eating with feeling guilt and shame and, oh, this is going to make me ill, or this is going to make me fat, or this is going to do this is going to do that.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's a big adjustment. It takes a while to come to terms with, I'm enjoying this and it's, nourishing me and it's healthy. But once you've come to terms with it, it's a great place to be. And it is, we tend to forget that, calorie-free this and, fat-free that. But why should anybody eat anything if it's not delivering any nutrition to their body? It doesn't mean everything has to be, just all health all the time. But what are we eating for if it's not to nourish ourselves and feed ourselves and, continue to thrive? I mean, it just makes no sense. Who needs to just have empty calories? It doesn't really.
Yes, I mean, some people talk about this, a way to, I don't know how best to explain it, but people talk about this switch from viewing food as something pleasurable to just viewing it as fuel. And, these bland diets and different things that people do. Mm-hmm. But I've even seen it mentioned with keto. And that just seems such a shame to me. These people who are trying to just associate food with fuel. And they're attacking you for getting pleasure from food. It just seems like this disconnect that really doesn't need to be there and shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be made to feel guilty for eating food. You should enjoy it.
No. I think it's a holdover of a sort of puritanical outlook. I mean, I think that personally. It doesn't, again, I don't, I know some people are coming from a space of, trying to, an addiction to food, that they need to pull it back and it's not their answer, their enjoyment, their answer to everything for that. And I absolutely understand that and respect that. We need to find a balance. We need to find a place where it belongs in our life, properly. But.
Oh, and I completely get that. Yeah, because there are plenty of foods that I just have to avoid because addiction or reminding me of a past addiction. So yeah, I do. I get that. Yeah.
And I don't want to put anybody down for that. But conversely, I think we absolutely have a right to enjoy our food. And I think the more that we enjoy our food, the more satisfied we are, the less we need to feel like compelled to continue to eat more past our comfort level. I don't want to eat a whole lot of something that is flavorless or empty of food value. I would rather eat a small amount, of something delicious. So, if you eat a couple bites of scordalia, believe me, you're moving on with your day. You're not going to eat that all day. Like that 2 cloves of garlic was enough. I'm ready to, I'm good to go. I'm shutting it down, You're satisfied. I don't need to eat a whole bucket of scordalia in front of my television while I zone out, to the TV. No, I don't. So, and I think that pleasure center is a part of us for a reason. We have a right to it. We have a right to enjoy the things that occur in our lives and the things that we need for our sustenance, so and I think that for a lot of people, keto has empowered them to have that joy and, enjoyment again. And I think that's great.
So I think you had another dip you mentioned, a fresh onion dip that also sounds like it might not be something you want to breathe on people afterwards, but it sounds delicious.
No, well, it doesn't. It's funny. It's one of my other favorite things, and I used to make it all the time back in the carby days, and I still make it now, but I use other things with it, and it's very simple. Just sour cream. You just start with a cup or 2 of sour cream, however much you want to make, and then a little bit of I use fresh scallion. So a couple tablespoons, maybe 2 scallions. If I was doing a cup, I would do about 2 of sour cream. I'd do about 2 scallions or green onions cut up fine. Shallots are delicious and slightly lower carb than, say, a red onion. So you could use about a tablespoon of minced shallot or a tablespoon of red onion if you have that. And chives, of course, are always wonderful. Some fresh chives. Go crazy with the chives. Use however much you want. Tablespoon to, 2 tablespoons or more. The secret, if you want to make it taste like American French onion dip, the secret is dehydrated onion or onion flake. A tablespoon of that mixed in will make it taste like good old French onion dip. If you just want it fresh, you can just use the fresh. Salt, obviously, a little pepper, and then I do a teaspoon or 2 of red wine vinegar and just a shot of, just a dash of hot sauce. You mix that together. And again, you let your flavors marry. So many things don't taste good until they really have had a chance to come together.
They just need to sit for a while, don't they? And steep.
Yep. They do. And the flavor becomes so much better. And if you have put in a tablespoon of the dried onion flake, it needs time to hydrate. Or it'll just be crunchy in there. And that's it. And it sounds so simple, it's so good. And I've newly discovered that better than potato chips is crispy bacon in there. It's like it's like a loaded, baked potato without the baked potato. The combination of the sour cream and the onion. And I usually use beef bacon. You just cook it till it's crispy. It is otherworldly. It's so
Yum.
good.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I've taken, actually, recently, I can't remember who told me about it, but finely slicing, and that's shallots I've been using, and just steeping them in vinegar for a while, and it takes out some of the strength of onion, and it kind of sort of sweetens them a bit, but delicious, and just leave them soaking for a while.
Yeah, I'll do that often with fresh onion or shallot if I want to, take a little bit of the bite out of it. I like to put shallot in vinaigrettes when I make them, of course. Same thing if I want a little garlic in a vinaigrette without overpowering it, I'll just cut a clove of garlic and drop it in and let it seep into the vinaigrette until I have the flavor I want.
And chives are a great thing to have in the garden, aren't they? They pick everything up.
Oh, they're wonderful. They're wonderful. Yeah, they're just a sprinkle of chives on eggs. So good. They're just wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, scrambled eggs with some chives in it.
Absolutely.
Very nice. So I've got a recipe that you can have it hot or cold, and it works really well as a dip when it's hot. I discovered as I was making it the chicken liver pate that I normally make and chill and have it as a pate. But I discovered once as I was licking the bowl out that it was really delicious, hot, and taste. I can't explain why it tastes different when it's hot, but it just tastes different from when it's cold. I don't know, somehow sort of richer, or I'm not sure, but it's very easy. And I don't have an exact recipe, again, because it's one of those things that changes every time I make it. Because I sort of throw in bits and pieces of what I have, but it's basically chicken livers. And I cook them on a medium heat in my cast iron pan with some butter, usually a tiny bit of olive oil and butter, and I cook them in there with some cloves of garlic. Often throw a bit if I've got some bacon. That's like the most stupid statement ever for a Ketonian, isn't it? If I have bacon, right. Yeah,
I'm breathing oxygen today.
A bit of bacon goes in there. Nice bit of smoky bacon gives a nice flavour. A bit of thyme, lots of black pepper, and lots of butter, and cook it up till they're done. Which are on a medium heat, so they're still going to be slightly pink in the middle. You don't want to cook the hell out of them.
Them.
And then you dump that in the food processor. Scrape the pan out, and then I deglaze it with a bit of brandy, and cook that brandy off to take the hard edge off. That goes in. I put in some mustard, some English mustard powder if you've got it, or Dijon mustard. A really good pinch of mace. If you haven't got mace, nutmeg will do, but mace is just and it's the outer casing, isn't it, of the nutmeg, and it's just a
yes, it is
stronger,
the membrane,
spicier. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a slightly different flavor, and it's nice, and it gives a real kick to this. Lots of pepper, and I tend to just melt more butter. I mean, there's almost, I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 with chicken liver and butter, but it might well be. There is a lot of butter. And
Viva la butter.
And you just blitz it up and dump it in a bowl, and it is great warm. Really yummy as a dip. Particularly nice with some sliced bell peppers. Goes particularly well with it. And then, of course, anything that you don't eat while it's hot, you can leave it and chill, and it's sliced up as pate another day, or to serve with. It's particularly nice with those seed crackers, with some butter on the cracker, some chicken liver pate, and some really hot mustard, or some pickles or something. Delicious.
Oh, sounds great. I'm just about salivating right now. It sounds wonderful. Yeah. And I mean, and that's a whole nother, I was trying to sort of keep it to the simple basics, and that's simple. But of course, that opens a whole new world, right, of, pates and terrines and traditional wonderful confit and things that are so keto that
I was going to say, I think we need to come back with pates and terrines and so many delicious things to make, aren't there?
Maybe it's lunchtime here. Maybe that's my problem.
Yeah, it's my dinner time, and my mouth is just watering like crazy now. So we've got a delicious array of dips and chips on offer. I can picture them so well in my mind. I just wish they were literally in front of me that I could tuck into.
I'd like to ring a bell and have someone deliver them right now.
So, have you got a top tip to round off today with?
Well, I think in light of what we've been talking about, I feel inspired to just say this, that life is meant to be enjoyed, and we are allowed to enjoy it, whether it's your food or something that you love to do, or whether it's finding enjoyment in the things that, quite frankly, you find to be a drudge. I don't love every moment of everything I do all day. I do a lot of drudgery, I guess you could call it. But I really try to find the moments of humor, enjoyment, thankfulness. And I think a lot of us, where we've been in our lives, what we've been through, whether it's to do with food or something else, it's so easy to forget that we are allowed to enjoy, and that things are meant to be enjoyed, and that joy is a part of our, like a right, a right is a part of our lives. In whatever it may be something so silly. It might be getting on the floor with a coloring book with your kids. It might be wrestling with your dog. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Those moments are worthy, and they're healthy. And I think that's my top tip. Enjoy it. You have a right to enjoy it. You are allowed to enjoy it, and you should enjoy everything you can to the utmost.
That's so true. It reminds me of an exercise I did quite a few years ago now, but it was one of those pivotal moments that really, really changes your outlook. And it was, I don't know, it was part of some kind of course I was doing online or something, I think. But it was a challenge that was set, and what you had to do at the end of every day was list 3 things that you were grateful for, or, that made you happy in some way. And it could be anything. It could be, gosh, that first cup of tea of the day, I really enjoyed that. Or I woke up today and there was a blue sky and the sun was shining and it made me feel happy. Or, my dogs made me laugh. Or, when I was out, someone, waved and said hello and it really cheered me. It can be massive things, or my niece was born yesterday. So it can be anything.
Yeah. But
you have to write down 3 things every single day for a month.
Right.
What you find is, and I wasn't in a particularly good place at the time and tended to see the bad things in life. Mm-hmm. But forcing yourself to do it, forcing yourself to find something, even though sometimes I really had to sit there and scratch my head and, well, what was there today that was good? Because everything seemed to be bad. But forcing yourself to do it every day. What started happening towards the end of that month is that you realised that you were starting to look for what you were going to write down for your homework at the end of the day.
Right.
But do you know, that literally was this huge shift in my perception. And it stayed with me that always now my instinct is to look for the good in something. Mm-hmm. And I can always find something good in pretty well any situation. There's always a way to see the good, see the enjoyment in it, and to notice that and experience it. Because that is what makes your day-to-day life. It can make it special if you can just recognize and enjoy those little moments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is the beauty, that when you because you have this assignment that you're going to have to fulfill, that you begin to look. And you, maybe that was a good moment. Oh, maybe that was a good moment. I think this was good.
And literally your whole perspective changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, we take a lot for granted, and I don't want to get on that, harp on that. But when we start to see, I was a hospice volunteer when I was in school, and a woman who was suffering with cancer. I remember, I'll never forget, one day she wanted to have a glass of wine and she couldn't have it. And she was a really sweet woman. And she said to me, I just am thankful for all the people in this world who are healthy and who have their health. I don't have mine, and you don't know what you have until it's gone. And she was so sincere in it. She said, I'm just so thankful for all the people who are healthy and are okay, and that they have their health. And that stuck with me. I will never forget it. She was suffering, and she was finding that to be thankful for, that there were people who weren't, that people had their health and they could enjoy it and they could appreciate their lives. And that really, was a moment that stuck with me and made me look at the world differently. And she did pass. She was a very, very sweet soul. And, I think sometimes, you get sick and you feel crappy and you realize, I was enjoying myself just by being okay. I was enjoying every day, and I didn't realize it until, so absolutely. There's just beauty and joy and loveliness all over, and even in our darkest hours, if we can see it, we can find it.
It's there. Yeah. If only you can see it. Fabulous. Well, as always, it's been wonderful talking to you today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Until next time. Which won't be far away. Yeah. Thank you, Taffiny.
Wonderful. Thank you.
To get the resources and links from the show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you want to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. If you fancy joining me on this exciting adventure and want to help me create new episodes, please go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/ketowoman, or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman podcast website. It's thanks to the two keto dudes that I'm hosting this podcast, so please consider heading to their Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com and help them bring you more podcasts like this one. This week's end quote is from Ella Woodward, aka Deliciously Ella. When life gives you Monday, dip it in glitter and sparkle all day. Bye bye, Keto Lovelies.